Hello and welcome everybody to the MTG Paper Legacy Discord's Tuesday night fight night. I am PresBOTW and I'm joined here by Oliver V. How's it going today?
Oh, it is a fantastic day. I get to sit here underneath you in terms of our camera setup, and we get to watch an absolute banger of a matchup to start this off today. I'm incredibly jacked about this.
Yeah, so we got on the left here, we got Aldrin, also known as Tensai, up against a newcomer here, Koenig. Apologies for the rest of the name there, but we got four color blue Marchesa control versus Torpornaught, which I love that deck.
See, I know how biased you are. So,
Yes.
Koenig, I'm so sorry. I'll be rooting for you today, just because I know that Prez is rooting for Aldrin, aka Tensai, right now. We're seeing
Yes.
we're seeing Tensai start off with an absolute banger. We're seeing Dark Ritual turn one right into the Torpor Orb. This Torpor Orb, of course, unlocks all the threats in his deck. The Phyrexian Dreadnought we see coming down on turn one, the good old 12/12 beater, and everything else in the deck, right? All the creatures really want to have that Torpor Orb in play.
Yeah, no, that's this is the start. That said, there are a lot of swords to plowshares in Koenig's deck.
That's kind
There
of
are four copies in the main, and there's also three Snapcaster Mages. However, the Snapcaster Mages are turned off by this Torpor Orb, of note.
and we are seeing swords number one come down.
Yeah,
This is exactly what Koenig needed against Aldrin's amazing start. And
yeah,
another MTGPL proxy Dark Ritual. Tensai, of course, winning them through some of our Saturday events to the Invitational. And just jamming threat after threat. We're seeing Hunted Horror come down right now.
yes. So, for those who don't know, Hunted Horror is a 2 mana 7/7 trample. When it enters the battlefield, your opponent is supposed to get 2/3/3 green centaur creature tokens with protection from black. But in Torpor Orb, you just get an undercosted beater again.
So this is really difficult now that we are, because that's actually an amazing point that this Torpor Orb is turning off the Snapcaster Mages. So when we go over and we look at Koenig's decks, the only real answers to these giant threats are the Baleful Strixes, the Swords to Plowshares, technically Drown in the Lock as well can handle it, and Vanishing Verse. Actually, the more that we talk about this, I guess there are a good amount of answers.
Yeah, and that is fine. However, as a control deck, like Aldrin's at 32. That's a ridiculous life total for a control deck to try and beat down. And this Hymn to Turok last card in hand is phenomenal.
Aldrin just with an amazing start from the get-go, right? We had turn
Ooh.
one establish the Torpor Orb that was so desperately needed. Go ahead and slam the the 1 mana 12/12, eat the swords, and then also be able to establish another threat that requires a source of plowshares.
Yeah.
Uh,
Lady Vitos,
oh,
thank you very much for the resub. Hits Baleful Strix and Brainstorm. Wow, what good hits. However, that also means that Koenig is hurting a lot on blue mana. We
yeah,
now see every single color in the deck except for blue.
yeah, this is really difficult, right? We're slamming the oh my
Oh.
goodness, is this a toxic deluge for 7?
Yes, it is. I
Going
love
down to
it.
6th life on this. All right, you know what? When you gotta remove the threat, you gotta remove the threat, okay? And that is another answer. Thank goodness Koenig was able to deploy that on turn 3 before Aldrin was able to swing in again and make it so that was going to kill him to try to be able to remove it. But we'll see what
Yeah,
will happen here. So Aldrin just needs to chain another threat off the top, right? At this point.
yeah. And looks like okay, this is a second Torpor Orb, it looks like here. Yeah, set Torpor Orb number 2. So this is another thing as well, because Koenig does have a copy or a couple copies, I believe, of there's one Kolaghan's command in the deck, which is huge. Okay, here we go with the Thoughtseize now. And again, Aldrin having functionally a zillion life here. Thanks, Swords to Plowshares.
Do you take these blue cards? I feel like we want to take the Teferi, just because that is an answer to any of our threats still, right? It's a bounce spell.
Yeah.
Um,
I
Even though there is no blue mana for Koenig at the moment, choosing to take
yeah.
the Brainstorm instead.
I I think that sounds very reasonable, honestly. I could also totally see taking the Teferi. The thing is that with the Torpor Orb specifically, Teferi has a very, very slow point of dealing with it. And with two copies of Torpor Orb, it's fine. Because the thing you're worried about is if Teferi bounces one of the cards, um, if Teferi bounces one of your threats when you don't have a Torpor Orb, to put it back down. So.
I suppose, right? And again, it's really my thought of just bouncing the threat. I'm not so worried about the Torpor Orb going. We are seeing another Thoughtseize chained off the top for Aldrin, so able to
Yeah,
actually take the Teferi. Seeing the Savine's Reclamation, an absolute banger of a card. I love
yeah.
that thing so much.
So of note, now that we're at 4 lands, we can actually cast Queen Marchesa, but still can't cast any blue spells. Oh, Teferi into play regardless.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think about that with the Savine's Reclamation. Maybe it was correct to take the Ponder once we see the Savine's Reclamation in play or
Could
in
be.
hand. Hmm.
I also could see actually taking the Savine's Reclamation there, if but for no other reason than the only chance you have to use it is on the flashback.
Oh, so basically need to get to 5 mana and then you can flash back 2 things. I don't know. That feels so bad to waste one of your 1-for-1 discard effects on the Sabine's Reclamation that you're still able to get such a
Yeah,
good value from.
I guess. Yeah, that is a good point. And then
Argon
looks like
Platypus, thanks for joining us today.
yes, thank you very much for being here. Okay, so we're gonna uptick the Teferi, and then during draw step, him to Turok. Oh wow, that was a Volrath stronghold off the top. That feels bad.
That is exactly what Aldrin wanted. That is able to go ahead and get back the Phyrexian Dreadnought on that turn
Hunted
so it can be
horror.
played again. Or a Hunted Horror or the Phyrexian Dreadnought, right? Is it
Dreadnought's
hit either
exiled.
creature?
So
Oh, that's very right. Yep,
yeah.
my apologies for that.
Tundra, we have a blue source. Incoming overdue ponder.
Oh, now this feels hard.
Yeah. So that being said, though, the thing that has to be very worried about here, with the exception of the murderous riders in Aldrin's deck, any of the threats, i.e., Phyrexian Dreadnought, Eater of Days, or Hunted Horror, any single one of them will immediately kill Koenig.
Of course, the Eater of Days being a 4 mana card, while Aldrin is down 2 lands to be able to cast it, that is not the draw we're looking for here, right? Like that is
No.
essentially that is functionally a dead draw at the moment.
Yeah.
Seeing like Delta, go ahead and fetching, going down to 5 life. It's
Oof.
amazing how much life we saw lost in those initial 3 turns, and now I think we're just gonna be petering out for a while before Aldrin's gonna be able to really get there in the end.
Yeah, exactly. And at this point, too, you kind of just I guess you kind of just want to get a murderous rider at this point, if for no other reason than you can just try and axe the Teferi and then immediately play it out and then start beating. Uh-oh. Okay. Uh-oh, we have a clock now. And given this particular board state, I don't know what else is in Koenig's hand, but yeah, I would immediately start
Yeah.
upticking. Just immediately. Um,
Uh, Bottom that
I'm
just because it
actually
makes
think
another
I'm
land
okay
live.
leaving that one on top. A, because Aldrin can't cast it right now, and B, it's going to be summoning 6, so the Teferi can just bounce it. If you needed to,
That
you
is
could just
true.
go Teferi bounce, Jace bounce, uptick Teferi. This Teferi is also at 8 loyalty right now, so it can bounce quite a few times.
And of course, Aldrin is not actually drawing the land along with that. Yeah,
Exactly.
this feels incredibly good for Koenig at this point.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where, Aldrin was kind of relying on the not having the blue source there, and it kind of went the distance, right? So, okay, so we're actually brainstorming on Jace right now. I guess with the fetch land there, I think that makes sense. Hmm.
So of note, we haven't seen a single Force of Will yet out of Koenig.
No. Which I'm sure Koenig would have loved that on turn one.
Well, let's talk about how nutty that turn was out of Aldrin, right? So Aldrin establishes both the piece that is the honestly the most needed part of this deck, right? The Torpor Orb effect, and then
Yeah.
also establishes a 1 mana 12/12 on turn one. If Koenig did not have that Source of Plowshares in the opening hand, and of course players approach this with it being a blind matchup. This is not an open deck list event. If it was not
Ooh.
for that Source of Plowshares, we would already be in probably done with game two, or at least well into it at the moment.
Yeah. So this is interesting now because you're able to discard the card that you know is in hand and also take out one of the Torpor Orbs here. So this means that Teferi can actually unsummon the Torpor Orb, and then Aldrin's going to need to pay mana for it, right, in order to recast it. And the other thing as well is this also opens up the Torpor Orb to get encountered.
Yeah, that K command was quite amazing there.
Yeah. Pay 3. Ooh, Scroll of Fate. Okay. So Scroll of Fate is actually huge here because it means that every card Tensai draws or Aldrin draws is able to become a 2/2, right? And in Koenig's case, he's gonna have to be worried about if it's is that a dreadnought or is it a hunted horror or is it a swamp? Because it could be any of them.
That's true, and this also turns off any sort of instant speed discard shenanigans like we had been seeing so far. So, for instance, Koenig is going to be unable to do in draw step him to Turok, or at least there'll be some value from Algin from that, just because he'll be able to turn that card immediately into a 2/2 rather than discarding it away.
Yeah. Oh, that was an end step ponder. Oh, okay.
The value of the Teferi. Oh, so good.
Oh
And
my goodness. Planeswalker
Planeswalker number
City.
3. This is amazing. This is a Super Friends deck. I did not realize that.
Apparently.
All 3 Planeswalkers that are in the list are on the battlefield right now. There's just one more Teferi Time Raveler hanging around somewhere in that deck at the moment.
Yeah. Man, ugh, the you want a textbook example though of why modern day legacy control decks play so many planeswalkers? This is exactly why. They're just kind of relying on the little control spells here and there, and then the planeswalkers are actually how you win a game of Magic.
They just
I
grind out some insane
actually,
value, right? Think of how many
yeah.
game actions that one chase gives you when it's sitting there over 5 turns.
Oh, exactly. So I actually really like the not manifesting there right away, just because that the Liliana cannot uptick on the manifest.
Here's the question, which Planeswalker do you prioritize getting rid of first if you're Aldrin? Do you just
The
ignore all of
Jace.
them and just try to be jamming in for these last 2?
I personally would actually hit the. Actually, no, I'd probably hit the Liliana of the Last Hope first.
Is
Let's
that just because
see.
the game-ending emblem, being able to start jamming so many zombies?
So Liliana will end the game or functionally end the game in 3 turns if left unchecked.
Oh.
Swords to Plowshares was attacking at Jason. That was a swamp. Aldrin back up to 30.
It's okay. Aldrin could be at 100. Koenig would still feel to be in a dominant position.
Yeah. Amazingly as well, both the Liliana. Okay, I actually really like playing this land here specifically. Castle Lochthwain is so good right now.
We're able to gain a little bit of card advantage, right? You aren't going to need to worry about the life total change at all, like being hit for 1 by activating it here.
Yeah,
Although it just feels a little too late for this castle, I'm not going to lie. At this point, Koenig is just so desperately far ahead with all these different planeswalkers, with
yeah,
the brainstorming every single turn, also with multiple bounce effects to be able to spend on a threat when Aldrin finally is actually able to deploy it. It does
yes,
feel that if we had the classic advantage slider like we used to see in the old WotC events, it would be pretty far in Koenig's favor at the moment.
absolutely. Aldrin's gonna need one hell of a draw here in order to get out of this, and I think by one hell of a draw, it's gonna need to be activate the Castle Lochthwain, and then put in a Phyrexian Dreadnought exactly, and then just hope Koenig doesn't have removal.
But even then, there's the bounce effects, right?
Yeah, and that's just it. Is that if you have exactly a Phyrexian Dreadnought, oh, interesting. So Koenig's actually trying to bounce the Scroll of Fate here.
I can respect that. We make the 2/2.
Yeah. Of note, Aldrin needs to make sure it's one more mana tapped.
Oh, that's true. It's 3 and tapping the Castle Lochthwain, right?
Yes.
And takes 1 damage from that, so it should be at 29 as well.
Yeah.
And we get to see the Queen Marchesa, the card that we were so excited to see. We officially have Monarch active in this game.
Actually, no, you don't.
What, we don't?
No, because
Oh,
when Queen Marchesa enters the battlefield, Torpor
oh
Orb stops
no!
it.
Oh no! Dang you, Torpor Orb! I wanted to see this so hard. What's the other effects on this? At the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent is the Monarch, put a... Okay, it doesn't matter. It's not
No.
relevant. Oh, what a bummer. All right, now I really want to see this Torpor Orb gone, and then the Queen Marchesa bounced with the Jace and replayed. That's all I care about anymore. Just give me
There
this.
you
Let
go.
me check this off my bingo card for today's event.
Well, you can do that because your Jace can down tick and your Teferi can also down tick here. So you just got to wait until you have the mana available and then just do it next turn.
I don't think we're actually going to see that. I don't think Koenig needs to whatsoever. This
Yeah.
advantage say at the moment is just so crazy. Liliana's going to be able to up and get the and then on the subsequent turn get the emblem going. And once that emblem's there, Tensai has what 4 turns before he's just completely dead.
Yeah, basically. And of note here as well, Queen Marchesa being Death Touch is really, really big as well in terms of being able to block. Because even if this is a oh, nice, using the brainstorm token to indicate it's a manifest. Nice.
Tensai or Aldrin showing off just every single one of his proxies that he's gotten from playing in our events. We of course saw the Dark Rituals earlier that he actually has sleeved up in the deck. He had to find a way to show us the brainstorms tonight, though. Also,
Yeah. So we're gonna Fate Seal and see another Castle Lochthwain.
you keep that there, right?
I think I'd keep that there. Yeah, a 2/2 is much less scary. Like, and that's just it. Is no matter what happens, the card is at minimum a 2/2 with the Scroll of Fate out. So, but that being said, a land is a deader draw than potentially like another thing. Because that's the other thing as well is that you cannot counter these 2/2s. And then Marchesa, I'd imagine, is going to block one of these.
I mean, you have to, right? We assume that both of these are coming at Koenig.
Yeah,
Koenig
they're both
has to
going
block
at
here.
face. If this is a trampler, though, this is huge.
Or if the other one's just anything. If it's
Yeah.
just any creature.
So 2/2 manifest is blocked by Marchesa. Did the other one? Oh, the O1
Oh,
goes through. Okay, that's what happened. I was like, how come there's no damage?
that makes a lot of sense. So the Lily's uptick, of course, able to give a creature -2, -1 until Koenig's next turn. And that was the one that was a hit going through and hitting for damage. So it was an 0-1 and not actually dealing anything whatsoever.
Yeah. That being said, though, because it's a manifest, especially out of this deck, you have to be still very careful. Because if that's the Phyrexian Dreadnought, the O1, then it's still going to become a 12/11 or a 10/11 coming across with Trample. Because you can just pay the 1 mana at any time to flip it up.
So it looks like a hymn was seen on top with the Fate Seal effect from Jace, decided to be kept there. We're seeing it to Fairy Bounce on, I believe, the scroll. Yes.
Looks
And
like it, yeah.
in response, Aldrin is going to go ahead and manifest one more time.
Yep. Makes 2 zombies.
And
And
this is where it
then
gets really difficult.
activate the castle. Draws another card. One deeper. Draw a card. Of note here, Phyrexian Dreadnought is still a very scary draw. Play the Scroll of Fate. And we're gonna. This looks like a hard cast Force of Will. Absolutely. Love it. Passes turn.
So, what do you want for Aldrin here?
Um, I think I want Murderous Rider right now. Just so that way, well, it's kind of hard this way. I'm assuming it's not in hand. This Jace is gonna hit 13 here right away. It's currently at, I believe, 11, or is it at 9? Either way, this Jace is getting precariously high, and okay, so it is now at 11. Oh, there's a Dreadnought that can go probably right to the bottom. Leaves it on top. Interesting. Very interesting. Um, yeah, I think you just need to get the bigger threats through and just kind of hope they land at this point. It's kind of rough on whatever else you can do. So crash for 7 here, down to 21.
And we're just going to start seeing so many zombies chained now that we need to see the scroll of fate come in and manifest a trampler, right? That's kind of the only way that we're going
Yeah,
to be able to get through at this point. And then, of course, the two tramplers being the hunted horrors and the Phyrexian dreadnoughts.
and Eater Days. Every single one of them tramples. But that being said, though, and that's just it too, is that we know that there is a dreadnought in hand for Aldrin right now. Um, so I'm not exactly sure what Aldrin needs to do to get out of here. I think hitting that um
Yeah.
the Volras stronghold on the instant speed up or draw step him. Oh, oh
Yeah, that
man, that
was
would have made this
amazing.
game so different.
Well, Volras Stronghold is exactly meant for this sort of situation, right? To be able to grind out control decks and just basically play a threat every single turn. But it does not matter when it gets discarded to him to Turok, though. That was fantastic. Really
Yeah.
cool game one. We got to see Aldrin really go off and show us what this deck can do in terms of showing us a 12-12 threat on turn one. And Koenig kind of showing us what he can do as well, right? Having that turn one swords to deal with it, swords being the card that we thought was going to be the big deal in this matchup, and rightfully was so. And then just grinding out with the Super Friends threat, right?
Yeah, exactly. And of note as well, Liliana the Last Hope really showing how powerful that emblem is. Just being able to absolutely take over a game. The first turn, you go up to 4 power. If those zombies don't die, you add 8 power the following turn up to 12. And then the following turn after that, you will add 16 power up to, what is it, 28? So it just gets so exponentially large if you do not answer those zombies.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason that we think that getting that ultimate off is the game ender because you got 3 turns, maybe 4. Like that's all you really can do. Let's jump into sideboards though, real quick.
Yeah. So in Aldrin's sideboard, we got 1 copy of Dread Knight, 2 copies of Surgical Extraction, 2 Liliana's Triumph, 1 Ashiok Dream Render, 2 Fairy Macabre, 1 Liliana the Last Hope, 2 Lost Legacy, 2 Plague Engineer, and 2 copies of Massacre.
So I actually really like some variation of surgical extraction or uh what is it? Or lost legacy. And ultimately the reason that I think this is that Uh, Tensai did not see the Vanishing Verse at all or the Drown the Lock. So from Aldrin's point of view, the card that you really need to care about is the Source of Plowshares. Um, it's kind of a meme a lot of the times that people discuss bringing in source like surgical against Source of Plowshares. However, I do think it's correct in this matchup. You're
Yeah.
able to take out cards like Tainted Strike, go down on the Dark Ritual as well. You don't need to be as explosive in this matchup. It's not like you're really racing anything. Um, and I just do think it's correct for you to be able to kind of trim those out of the deck. Whether you do that with Lost Legacy or whether you do that with Surgical Extraction, kind of up in the air. I do think Surgical Extraction is the way to go. Alternatively, I do think we'll also be seeing the Liliana the Last Hope come in, just because it is another threat that Koning has a harder time answering. We just saw how massive it is if you're able to go off with that ultimate. But of course, in Aldrin's deck, the -2 is very, very relevant, right? It's another Volras Stronghold type effect of being able to get back threats again and again. So those are the
Yeah.
cards I'm imagining coming in, kind of those three. What do you
So,
think?
so I agree in most cases. However, the one thing I disagree on is very specifically cutting the dark rituals. I also like Ashiok Dream Render in particular in this case right here, just because it turns off the fetch lands. So the
True.
thing is that using Dark Ritual, you can land a Liliana, an Ashiok, or play Lost Legacy on the first turn of the game. Not only that, but it also enables you with the literal Swords to Plowshares or Bust answer my turn 1 12 Trampler.
That is true. Um, my thought process on it is though, it's just such a bad card to draw when we're expecting these games to go long, which we really are. Where yeah, it's a card that enables cheesing out Koenig, but if it doesn't happen in exactly that situation, it just feels kind of bad, right?
Yeah,
I'm really interested to see what Aldrin decides to do. Of course, there's multiple
yeah.
ways that you could approach this matchup. Let's see what Koenig is doing though. So Koenig has 2 Flusterstorms, 2 Pyroblasts, 2 Surgical Extraction, 1 Null Rod, 1 Revoke Existence, which is exile target artifact or enchantment. That's a reader. We don't see that too often in Legacy.
No.
1 Court of Cunning, 1 Kolaghan's Command, 2 Plague Engineers, and 2 Skyclave Apparition. What do
One
you like on
Vanishing
this
Verse as
sideboard plan?
well.
Oh, did
One
I miss a
Vanishing
Vanishing
Verse
Verse?
as well.
Oh, I
Yeah.
skipped right over that, right? Yeah, so 1 Vanishing Verse. What cards do you like here?
Absolutely Kolaghan's Command. The card is absolutely bonkers. Being able to deal with pretty much anything that Aldrin's doing. I also really like Skyclave Apparition as well because it is a way to exile without gaining life. Which is really big because that the amount of life gain from Swords to Plowshares is absolutely horrendous, and unfortunately, due to how massive these creatures are, I don't think Koenig can afford to go down on swords.
I like your game plan overall. I do think that the revoke existence can come in. We kind of saw how fundamental the artifacts are for Aldrin's deck. Of course, revoke existence also able to hit the Phyrexian Dreadnought, also being able to hit the Eater of Days. Basically, the one threat that it misses is the Hunted Horror, but also able to hit the Scroll of Fate, which we kind of saw was after you get chunked by the fatties a little bit, the 2/2s can come in and really be a threat.
Yeah.
Um, and then I
Oh,
also
hitting a
Master Reaper Paladin's
Triome?
command for the same reason.
We hit a
Ooh, the
Triome
Skies.
and a Hymn to Turok. That was a very good hymn from Aldrin there.
Oh, absolutely. It turns out when you're hemming, it's kind of going to be good no matter what half the time.
Yeah. As far as I know, you were talking about normally cards that come out. Hull Breacher can totally come out. I think it turns off literally Castle Lochthwain. I don't know if it's really worth it. I think I'd rather just have more removal
I think
personally.
Savine's Reclamation is another potential to come out. Um,
Yeah,
Sabine's Reclamation is really good in Wasteland matchups, is a lot of the time that you see it played, or kind of in the grindier long game decks, where Koenig is not the one who's playing the grindy deck. Koenig is the grindy deck making the game go long. I don't think that you really need the Sabine's Reclamation. I think that's able to come out as well. But we're going to have to see what we actually see out of these players at this point. I do think
yeah,
Vanishing Verse is this kind of weird iffy thing in Koenig's plan where it's able to hit exactly the Hunted Horror, right? That's kind of the only thing that it's able to deal with because it, of course, misses on the Dreadnought and it misses on the Eater of Days.
yeah,
Um, so that's a little up in the air. I think you can afford keeping in the one as just a deal with it. You spend your swords and your shatter effects on the artifacts, and then you have that one Vanishing Verse. I'm sorry, the two main deck to be able to spend on the really the only threats that they're targetable with it.
yeah.
Of note, of course, Vanishing Verse is also able to hit Liliana, although Koenig did not see that in game one, and this is not open deck
Ooh,
list.
Brainstorm, Snapcaster, Drown in the Loch, and 2 lands.
I feel like this is a brainstorm.
I think I like the Brainstorm here too. However, at the same time, I could also see benefit in taking the Snapcaster Mage here. You don't have an orb online right now. Yeah, it takes the Brainstorm. Because the
Fantastic.
thing is that you could even just play out the Snapcaster Mage here and then get the Brainstorm back, but you never know. Flooded Strand. And then is this going to be a fetch here? Nope. Please, Castle Lochthwain. Let's see if we can get something online here. Pay it
Torpor,
taps
show it.
2.
Show it. There we
Torpor
go.
Orb. Uh-oh. Yeah, so
It's
you're
not
going to need to
solving.
counter this. And of note, Drown in the Loch is going to work exactly in this case right here. Unless Aldrin Surgicals himself, which would be hilarious.
That'd be a next level play. No, that Torpor Orb is gone, which is
Yeah.
pretty unfortunate. I do.
Actually, the Surgical would not work because the Surgical would go to the graveyard still putting it at 2.
Oh, that's so true. That's hilarious. All right,
Uh,
well,
well, we tried. Yeah, Drown in the Loch be getting cashed in there, especially this early in the game, is quite impressive. Being able to have Drown in the Loch be live. Card's extremely powerful, but it's very narrow in terms of like decks like Death and Taxes. Drown in the Loch is a lot harder to have be good against.
I mean, it's a card that a lot of people have always talked about. Of
Yeah,
does this really fit in a control shell? Right? Does it work if I'm not like actively milling my opponent?
yeah,
And the truth of the matter is, don't play four of them, but in one or two, you can absolutely play it in a control shell and just let your opponent naturally get there. Dan
yeah,
TCG, thank you so much for joining us tonight, my man. Hope you are doing fantastic on this lovely Tuesday. And we're
yeah.
seeing Snapcaster come down, flashing back.
Oh,
Him.
him to Turok. I
Yes,
like
I
this a
like it.
lot. Also, one other thing I just want to comment on right now. For anyone who's like this completely unrelated, but anyone who's like, "Oh, Arkham's Astrolabe was fine," it's like, yeah, see, Koenig's getting all of the colors right now with 4 different dual lands in play. That's wastelandable, right? With Arkham's Astrolabe, you had access to this many colors, except there's no way to stop your opponent with all their basics.
Yeah, Wasteland, Blood Moon, Back to Basics. All those would be really good in play against Koenig right now. Unfortunately, Altern does not have access to any of those in his deck.
No.
We're going to have to see what got flipped.
Looks like we got
Liliana's Triumph and Eater of Days. Interesting seeing the Liliana's Triumph
uh
come in.
Hunted Horror, yes.
Oh, that's right. Hunted Horror.
Um I could actually see the Liliana's Triumph coming in because Queen Marchesa is extremely dangerous if Koenig becomes the Monarch. Which I suppose once Koenig becomes the Monarch, it's very difficult to get it back. Oh wow. So we're just gonna go Orb, Dreadnought, pass. The that hymn did not apparently hit what needed to be hit.
No, it did not. So we really want to know what's in Koenig's hand at this point. What were the cards that we saw left over? That was the
uh
ponder that was in.
the cards that were left over, they were a bunch of lands which have since been played. The Snapcaster Mage, the Ponder, and the Brainstorm were the only 5 cards we knew.
Okay, so everything in hand is unknown for us at this point.
Yeah.
Uh, please no swords. I want to see a game 3. Chessian, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yes, good to see you as well. And yeah, no, it's kind of interesting there. And we actually see a shuffle off of that Ponder, obviously not finding what Koenig wanted, which is kind of a big deal here. Because this Fire Exchange Dreadnought needs to be answered very quickly here.
So it is a 2-turn clock in theory, right? And
Yeah,
of
that's
note,
even with blocking. It's a 2-turn clock.
yeah. Of note, having the fetch land up and the shuffle off the Pondor is an incredibly good sign for Aldrin, right? So none of those cards were good, in other words, right? Because that fetch
Exactly.
land, you could have just taken whatever good card out of it and then just shuffled afterwards and been fine. But Koenig is definitely digging for an answer right now, it seems.
Yeah,
Fetches. So what are the answers here? We could have Jace come down. We could have Teferis come down. Colgan's Command, if they've come out of the side, which we're expecting. Source of Plowshares. Oh, wow. There's a lot of potential answers. And the
yeah.
Jace.
The Jace does come down, so this is more than likely going to bounce the Dreadnought.
It has
Uh,
to.
it has to, largely because I believe Koenig's already played a land this turn. Yeah, bounce the Dreadnought, and this feels so bad because that Dreadnought's coming back down next turn.
Yeah, but you're just buying time with it, right? So that Dreadnought is not going to be able to attack for 3 more turn cycles at the very least. And
Yeah.
any answers
Oh.
are Thoughtseize reveals Baleful Strix. Okay.
Oh.
That's a good
Okay.
bet.
That's an amazing get because Aldrin really does not want that Baleful Strix to come down because, yeah, for sure, the Dreadnought will get through, but the bird will kill the Dreadnought, and that's a huge issue for Aldrin.
So I have a question. If you're Koenig right now and you choosing to brainstorm. This is exactly the
Interesting.
question. If you draw a garbage card, do you take the bounce, knowing for sure that you're able to fade the Phyrexian Dreadnought for a single time, or do you take the brainstorm to gamble?
That's a really good question. I I actually kind of like the gamble here, just because that you need something, anything to deal with this Dreadnought. And that's the problem because if this Jace down ticks, right, and you don't find anything, then what you need to do is that the Dreadnought's coming back down again next turn, and you still are going to have to answer it, and that might actually kill your Jace. Oh, here we go. Discard a card, destroy target artifact. I
Yeah,
would bet. And
that's
more than
exactly the bet.
likely, yeah. Oh, wow. Hits Lily of the Veil. Oh, my goodness. That was a good K command.
Oh, that get of the K command was just amazing off of that brainstorm effect there. That feels so fantastic for Koenig. Aldrin
Yeah.
is just completely in top deck mode here. Needs to find another threat. Of note, Eater of Days is not a live draw at the moment until there's another land drop.
Yeah.
This castle is not live either without another land drop. So
Yeah.
Koenig now just with an active chase, beating the Snapcaster Mage, and definitely in the driver's seat.
Yeah. And this is one of the things. What happened?
Oh,
Oh,
looks like Dark Ritual to activate castle.
that's awesome. Play second castle. That's the fourth land needed. Color Red 1985. Thank you very much for the follow. Um, the one thing that I've found as a practitioner of the Torpor or Dreadnought deck myself, Oh, revoke
Oh
existence.
no.
Here we go. So this is gonna hit that torpor orb now.
Jesse, and of note, the reason that the Dreadnought trigger is not happening on the cast is because the Torpor Orb being out. Torpor Orb making it that creatures' ETBs do not happen. That turns off the Snapcaster Mage ETB. That turns off, of note, the Phyrexian Dreadnought ETB. It turns off the Eater of Days ETB, and it turns off the Hunted Horror ETB. This entire deck on Aldrin's side of the table is basically just trying to optimize Torpor Orb and abuse it to just play the cheapest and fattest fatties.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing too that I've noticed is that like it seems as if this deck has trouble against a stabilized opponent, which it does, but at the same time, you're sacrificing some of that long game consistency in exchange for some of the most brutal starts you can ever have in Legacy. Like there are some starts out of this deck that just cannot be dealt with in a lot of cases because like if you don't have removal for a turn 1 12 12, it'll get you.
Are we gonna see castle activation? No, we have a 2-drop, so this is either a him or potentially another torpor orb effect. No, just passing back.
Yeah. Fetch. Down to 17 here.
Goes down to yeah. All right, so doing this before the brainstorm effect from Chase feels all right if Koenig knows what Koenig knows what those cards are, putting them away. I guess if you're Aldrin, it feels good that it isn't happening for
Yeah.
the brainstorm on this turn. However, Koenig's able to see 3 new cards here. And this
Yeah.
2-1 might just be the threat that goes all the way, honestly. Able to get there in 6 turns, potentially 5 if Aldrin is priced into activating the castle at any point.
Yeah. Oh, we're paying 4. What is this? We got there. We got there.
And we actually get the Monarch this time. I am not wrong. There is no Torpor Orb in play, so that means that Monarch is here, and now this feels like it's just going to be in a massive snowball that's going to be almost impossible for Aldrin to get out from underneath.
Yeah. Of note, Queen Marchesa also having haste.
Oh, oh, that's huge for the clock, actually.
This is massive for the clock, especially because that. So activating Castle Lockthwaite here, this puts Aldrin on a 2-turn clock now. Because this is going to lose Aldrin another 2 life. Aldrin's down to 4. Draw a card. And we'll see what happens here.
What does Aldrin need to get out of this situation?
I don't know if there's anything really that can, but we'll find out. Liliana the Veil's a decent one, but it's not enough, I don't think.
You have to Lily minus to eat one of the creatures, kill the 2-1 in the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're forced to downtick here. Get rid of the Snapcaster Mage. And then so this is on Koenig now to decide if Marchesa comes in at Lily or if Marchesa comes in at Tensai. And he just concedes.
We're seeing Dark Ritual as the last card on Aldrin's side. Aldrin's going to be unable to activate the castle at any point, and Koenig just has the Monarch advantage, right?
Yeah,
As anybody who plays Pauper knows, having the Monarch for 4 turns or 3 turns or whatever is
it's
just this.
disgusting.
It's a snowball. There's no way that you can continue to fight against your opponent when they are just 1-for-1ing you constantly and have the Monarch active. I'm interested to see how these players sideboard. We see the Massacre come in. Interesting, I guess, after seeing the zombie army that happened with the Liliana emblem, that's a potential thing. Interesting not seeing the Liliana itself coming in for Aldrin. And then what
Yeah,
was the other card we were talking about? And not doing the surgical or lost legacy plan against the removal spells. I have respect for that as well, just choosing to approach it in a different way.
yeah.
But kind of exactly the cards that we were talking about from Koenig coming in.
Yes, exactly. So, anyway, that will do it for round 1 on today's fight night. Thank you very much for joining us here tonight. We will be back shortly for round 2, and we will see you then. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, fam.